Hey everyone, so I'm going to try streaming art for the first time. Let's see if I can get the right setup and everything. This is actually a lot more complicated setup than one would think. Okay, so I'm starting a watercolor painting of Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII. I'm doing this piece is going to be him in his starting outfit from Final Fantasy VII. I like the Advent Children outfit better, but I don't know. I like this outfit better for drawing and painting, I guess. It's less one-colored, and there's more highlights and shadows that are easier to see in this version. So as you can see, I mostly have the pencil outline done. I have the reference picture up on the computer in front of me. So usually what I do for this process is I will do an outline of the character, and then I will go over it in ink. This is on watercolor paper, by the way. I will go over it in ink, and then I will erase all the pencil lines. So right now we're just doing first step, which is just doing the outline. And this doesn't have to be perfect by any means, because you're going to be going over it in pen anyway. Okay, and bear with me. I'm not used to drawing on video, so this is a new experience for me. Something that I like about this style, which is like the Tetsuya Nomura style, the guy who does Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, is there's a lot of hard shadows and a lot of hard lines. So there's less blending that you have to do unless you want to. Okay. You know, fingers have definitely never been something I've been super good at. But I've also noticed that people don't tend to look at the fingers that much. Same with feet and toes. Yeah, I might end up changing this hand when I go over it in pen. Okay, that needs to go straight down. Yeah, as you can see, that this hand is not the best hand I've ever drawn, but it is in its first phase still. Once you start getting the shading and the watercolor in here, it will look a lot different. I feel like a lot of small details like that can be forgiven too after you've colored it, because if the piece is as a whole pretty good, it's not going to drag you down a whole lot if you have little mistakes like unrealistic looking fingers or just small details that people aren't going to notice as much. It's really about how the whole thing comes together, and that's actually a pretty useful lesson for artists. It's like if you start a piece and it's not coming together right away, there is a chance that you can fix it, and it can turn out really good even with your mess ups. Something I did yesterday, I did a self-portrait, and I didn't realize when I had outlined it that I had pushed too hard with the pencil. So it left a lot of grooves dug into the paper, and I didn't realize until I had started shading it, which was really unfortunate because you can't just get rid of those deep gouges in the paper. I might have also just been using especially soft paper for my art, but it was like a sketchbook. So what I'm trying to do now is get all of like the little intricate line work done, because it will make it a lot easier once you go back with pen if everything is dark, but not too dark to erase. It's just dark enough that you can see it. Something I've definitely noticed with Nomura's art style is there is definitely a lot of those intricate little lines that are being done. You can actually kind of look like look at the line work as a fairly easy way of doing details. Like if you look back at one of my older pieces, I'll see if it will come up on the slideshow. I actually just did it a couple days ago, but it's a watercolor Vanitas from Kingdom Hearts. And that one, the details are, in a lot of ways, in the line work. Like the lines on his suit, as opposed to facial details or trying to make the body look accurate. It's like the whole piece is in a particular style, and it all goes together. That's what's important. I would definitely say this step, it's important not to be hard on yourself about how it's coming together. The good thing about pencil is you can always erase it too. I use a mechanical pencil for this because it gives me clean lines and it doesn't smudge a whole lot if I run my hand over it. But maybe if you're newer, I would recommend an H grade pencil. Those are going to be harder and easier to erase, as opposed to like a B pencil, which is going to be really dark and good for shading, but it's really easy to smudge. That was a problem I had with my self-portrait that I just finished. I used an 8B pencil, which is probably way too soft for that kind of thing, and even though I was using a paper under my hand to prevent smudging, the paper was just smearing it because the graphite was so soft. Okay, so I have like the top half of him done now. Doesn't look too bad. Really, with a lot of Nomura art, I think the face is the most important part. Not, it's mostly important just to get like the nose right, because that can make or break any kind of anime style of art, I would say. Okay, let's see if I can lift this up so you can see it a little bit closer. Okay, so we've got that typical Nomura style hair, like Sora or Vanitas. We've got his kind of wiry, I guess, muscles. That's pretty popular in the Nomura style. This light might be a little bit too bright. Let me adjust the light a little bit. I want it to be bright enough that you can see it, but I don't want it to be like so bright that it's getting rid of all the details. Just 1 second. I'm gonna try to mess with that switch if I can find it. Oh no. Okay. Webcam fell down. This is just a first for us all. Okay, let me adjust the webcam real quick. Yeah, this webcam doesn't have like a very good sturdy stand on it. Kind of just balancing it on top of the monitor right now. Okay, where were we? Okay, we're just kind of on the waist right now. I think the pants are going to be the hardest part of this piece because there is so much line work that goes into it. Let me see if I can... I'm going to pull up my reference picture just so you can see real quick. Okay. So yeah, if you can see it here, this is my picture of Cloud that I'm working on. So the pants have got a whole lot of line work there to do the shadows, but I do think this is going to look good with watercolor. Okay. The good thing about even with these washed out lights that I have right now, when I get into doing the ink for this, it's going to be really easy to see all of the lines. I would definitely recommend having your reference picture up right in front of you so you don't have to move your head very much to look at it. And you are able to take some creative liberties, so if there's something that you either don't like in the picture, a small detail or something, or it's just something that you mess up on, it's really within your power as the artist to choose what is exactly the same as the reference picture and what's not. Like a lot of the most popular art I've seen online is stylized in a way that is not like the original. Yeah, you can already see the lines starting to come together towards the feet there a bit better. And as with most art, I would recommend working from, if you're right-handed, to work from the left to the right side, and to work from top to bottom so you avoid smudging as much as possible. And then with left hand, you do the opposite. You would do top to bottom still, but you would do right to left. So one thing about using graphite is it does smudge a lot if you're not using like a H grade pencil or something. The trick with doing shadows on clothing is to have a good mix of geometric and organic lines. As you saw in the reference picture, it's definitely not any hard. There are some hard straight lines, but it's definitely not all of it. It's not like where some cartoons, it's all the shading is hard lines and it looks very simple. I would say Nomura's style looks simple, but it's kind of a more complicated form of the generic anime style. I personally prefer Nomura's style to a lot of anime, probably because of that uniqueness. And I can probably also relate because my personal style has always been very similar to anime, but I've never been able to quite get that anime look. So my work definitely has its own style, but it's very similar to anime in certain instances. Sometimes in your outline you'll miss lines or shadows. I would recommend just going in very light to freehand them in after you've already done the initial outline. And I think watercolor paper is pretty soft, so I would just recommend being careful with how hard you push your pencil. So while I'm not great at drawing feet, I'm usually pretty good at drawing shoes, but the problem is it's like eyebrows, they're always sisters but never twins, which it's kind of a problem when you're drawing shoes. Obviously you want them to look alike. It's like mine, the heel is always like a little bit different from one shoe to the other. Oh man, the crouch of Cloud is very, it's like where it gets the most convoluted with the shading. Something that I was taught when I was in high school art class, which was really my first art class that I took in school. It was to what they taught us was that when you move your head, the picture kind of moves in a way because you're changing the perspective. So the more you can just move your eyes up and down between the reference picture and the piece that you're working on, that's going to be the best way to get accuracy, get the right proportions, get the right details, as close as you can at least. Especially if you are a newer artist, though, this can be pretty difficult because it's like the left side of your brain is very like business efficient oriented, and it likes to tell you like what you think the reference picture looks like and wants you to trust that rather than actually looking at the reference picture. It's like your brain thinks it knows what's better, but it really doesn't. And this is even more important if you're doing like actual portraits, which I do pretty often. Like I said, with cartoons, there's a lot more leeway and creative freedom. Leather has never been one of my strong suits in drawing, though. Leather has like the certain like crosshatch kind of texture on it. I guess it's like the texture of skin, which is kind of gross, but it's kind of hard to do when you're also trying to shade. Because it's like in the darkest parts and in the lightest parts, you don't see that leather texture. It's like for I did this piece of Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow, and she's wearing like this leather jacket with this like pleated cape. She's got all of her crazy braids, and it's like all of those textures alone are hard enough, but then you start on her leather jacket with the like long wizard sleeves. I think I pulled that one off decently though. Unfortunately, Cloud's sword was like so big that I couldn't even fit it in this picture. Like by the time I had already started doing the outline. So it might seem like really intuitive, but I think a good way to set yourself apart as an artist is to take your time with each piece. When it comes to shading, you want to do gradual layers, I would say, and just build up slowly, layer after layer. Kind of like if you're painting with oil paint or something. But I've definitely found that's a good way to stop having such hard lines in your art. If you're doing something like portraits or scenery or trying not to do outlines. But when you have really good details that you take time on in something like this, it will set your art apart from others. I think a lot of people get tired partway through their piece. I know I do sometimes. And they just want to rush through the end of it and just skip the details and get it out. And I understand if you have deadlines like a lot of professional artists do. But if you can, I would recommend taking your time. I'll be that parent that tells you, like, take your time. You know what is kind of funny? When it comes to clothes, the bane of my existence is the fly down the middle of the pants. It always looks so weird when I do it. Like a lot of the times I'll just do a single line up the middle, or I just won't give his pants a fly. It's basically just like, when I draw it, it looks like a stripe. It's like, look at my penis, it's right here. I almost would rather draw a zipper, which a lot of people know are difficult to draw. looks a little messy right now, but as soon as I start filling in the shadows, it should look better. This is just the beginning. Okay, the reference picture cloud is going to have a little bit more of an ass than mine is. I don't know. Maybe I can fix it. Yeah, that looks better. You'll thank me when I'm done. So I think what I'm going to do for this one, for the background, is do all black watercolor. I usually will do like a white circle in the middle or do a black circle of watercolor in the middle and have it white around the outsides. I don't know, for Cloud I'm thinking I should do like some kind of cityscape, like Midgar or something, but like I'm just kind of getting into watercolor, so I'm really focusing on the people and obviously the clothes that go along with the people. I don't know, it's not too late. I could still do this painting in color, and then I could do like a blue, green, black color scheme for the background. We've got plenty of time to decide though. So the tricky part that's coming up for me is just making sense of all these lines in the pants, trying to just figure it out before I do ink, because it can get pretty messy in the sketching stage. I'm trying to see around my webcam to see this reference picture. It's a little bit difficult. Breaking my own rule and moving my head a bunch. It's the technology. Another tip I would have for any form of art, really, something that I really appreciate in art is high contrast. Especially with, I would say portraits, but also things like this, like cartoons. So like a harsh black solid versus a harsh white solid is the obvious example. But it just really makes them stand out from each other. Same goes with complementary colors. So if you're using, say, purple and yellow against each other, like that's high contrast coloring. And then if you're doing black and white, like that's a really good way to practice shading, is by doing black and white watercolor, black and white graphite, colored pencils, acrylic paint. Just finding all the different values you can make with one color in water is really important, because you can take that and bring it to your colored pieces. That's definitely something that I have done with watercolor, like getting familiar with all of the shadows. And then also try to make each project more challenging than the last. I know that definitely sounds like a cliche, but I'm trying to do that, and even if you mess up, worst case scenario, you mess up and you start a new project, or you start over. You really don't have anything to lose by trying things that are a little bit harder than you think you can handle. Speak of the devil, there is a zipper. I didn't even realize he had zippers on his boots. It's okay, they're small zippers. I think we can handle them maybe. Okay, I'm trying to give this some dimension. Maybe too much. Yeah, drawing a shoe from the side is not as difficult as drawing the shoe head on, but at least you don't have to make them match if they're like this. Asymmetry is beautiful. Used to be when I would draw shoes from the front, they would look like hooves. But knock on wood, that doesn't happen this time. If hooves had tongues and cuffs on them and zippers, maybe. One would think that all these like puffy pants these characters wear have got to be so like hot because they're always running around and jumping and doing parkour. I guess that's why he wears a tank top. Okay, what else do we have to do on the pants? More shading, obviously. Oh, this is going to be fun to paint with watercolor. All these very small variations of the same shade of black. So this is all like a dark area. So I'm sure that the shading is not going to look exactly like the reference picture, at least on the pants, but it's because freehanding these kinds of lines and trying to get it perfect is really hard. And I don't think my painting is going to suffer for it though. So if you're ever having trouble with like doing a sword behind someone's back, sometimes it can be hard to match where the lines go and like the angles that they're at. Something that's really easy you can do if you need is you can just do a very light line through the drawing to see where it would connect. And just make sure you do it really light so you can erase it after you're done using it. Cloud Sword has a lot of these hard line shadows on it, so that will make it easy to color in. It's basically this part will just be like a simple darker to lighter gradient, and then these parts will be lighter. And then this whole area is completely black, including the shadow on his arm, so that's easier. Okay, so I think we're actually pretty close to being done with the outline. Obviously, it's pretty bare bones still. You can see his pants are a little bit of a mess right now. But I think most of it looks pretty good. A lot of these hard lines will just end up being dark shadows, so. As for the background, I might just go with a simple circle, because that is a good way to show contrast. Or does Cloud have, he's got some kind of like symbol synonymous with him. It might just be the FF. I could put that like an FF inside of like a circle maybe, like a negative space. I just want it to stand out from my other watercolor Nomura style drawings. I don't want to do like a square. You know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to do a negative space circle in the middle that will be white, just behind him, and then the outlines will be black, and it will be kind of signifying Cloud's struggle against Sephiroth / struggle with the darkness in Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, I think that should work out. This is the third Nomura character I've drawn with the same hairstyle, because I've done one of Sora, one of Vanitas, and now Cloud. I think Cloud wears it the best, though, honestly. Okay, so there's like this heart-shaped shadow here, and then there's a couple beneath it. Okay, so this should... This is like a split shadow there. And then the side of the leg too, I missed a couple shadows there. Oh man, the struggle of an artist, it's like sometimes you get so into what you're doing, gaming or arting, drawing or whatever, that you don't even realize how much time has gone by until your stomach starts hurting because you haven't eaten all day. Something I've noticed happen quite a few times. It's like, oh, I wake up at 2, somehow it's already midnight. Ooh, no, mess up the light. Okay, what time is it? It's not quite midnight, so I can wait a little bit longer before I become ravenous. How does that look? I think it looks pretty decent for the sketch. I don't know why I made the side of his sword all curved looking though. That should not be curved. I think it's because the shadow is curved there. There's also a lot more like detail on his chest that I haven't really gotten into yet. It's like you can kind of see the outline of his pecs, but not too well. Just tell me pecs or no pecs. Make it easy. Yeah, I definitely don't want it to look like he's bare-chested, but it's like his turtleneck tank top thing is pretty tight and he's like, fit. There's also stripes and pretty dark shading on his tank top, so I don't have to make it too perfect. Thankfully this zipper is pretty simple looking. I used to draw the Organization 13 jackets a lot, and they also have like the big long zipper down the middle, and then there's the like bejeweled drawstrings and also the chain that goes across the front. So it's like small detail, and then you get into the shadows of this leather jacket and then their face. Yeah, so I think I am going to go black and white for this one. I think it will just look better. It's kind of funny, the whole point of choosing this one over the Advent Children jacket was because it was too black, but I'm like doing black watercolor either way. Okay, let's try to make a nice negative space circle here. I kind of like that when you do a negative space circle in the middle and then you do a black background, it looks kind of like the moon, even if you don't add any like craters or any details whatsoever. Yeah, trying to make the circle match all the way around can be pretty difficult, actually. I will usually sketch it out a couple times before I go on with ink. This bottom right corner is off. That reminds me of something. If you're ever doing art and there's like an eyelash or a hair that falls onto it, be like super careful about brushing it off with your hand because you have oils on your hands. Especially if you've already smeared graphite with the heel of your hand by accident. It can just ruin your whole drawing, even if it's like almost done. Especially if it's like a black and white graphite piece. I've done that a couple times, like get a big old black smudgy fingerprint right in the middle of a face I've already spent like 4 hours shading. So what I would recommend, what I do, is I will like try to like swallow all the spit in my mouth and just blow on it with dry air as much as I can to get little specks of things off. I have made the mistake of accidentally spitting onto a piece before and like leaving spit marks in it because it was chalk. So learn from my lessons so you don't mess up your pieces. You can already see with this piece, even though it's probably hard to see with this lighting, but there's already like hand smudges up here and here just from me moving my hand across the canvas a little bit. And this is mechanical pencil, so it's not like super soft either. Oh my god, I can hear my stomach growling. Just wait, I'm working. I need to just get like a flavorless nutrient pill that I can take so I don't have to waste time eating. I'm not sure how I feel about this circle. It looks kind of like an egg shape, and it has to be circular. Like a clean circle. Let's shave that egg head off of it. Maybe that will help. So I'm gonna try to do this like I did my last watercolor piece, which I will show you real quick. So with this one I did the black background. I'm gonna do that the same here and then leave the middle white. It's really easy to bleed over the background onto this part though, so there are ways to fix that, kind of erase the watercolor. But I'll get more into that once I actually start painting. But something else I do is if you look closely, you can see this white outline around most of it. That's what I'm talking about when I mean like I really appreciate high contrast, because if I had just not outlined this in white see his black hair and his black suit and parts of his keyblade would have just been the same color as the background. And it makes it really hard to make out details if everything is just kind of the same, homogeneous. So usually what I will do is just outline the subject. So if there's any like small items in the background, I would not outline them in white. That way you can really make your subject stand out. And then I do that with a white gel pen. So those are pretty easy to find. You just want to be careful because it can run like paint if you're not careful. So you want to not smudge that and just be careful when you're outlining it. You don't want to ruin the finished piece. Having major feels about the circle. It's like kind of square in this corner. Yeah, having like a clean circle in the background will make it look a lot neater and more orderly than if you just have a weird blob in the background. Maybe I made the circle too big, and that's why. There is going to be a white border around the edges, so that will also help with the high contrast, but will also blend in with the circle a little bit, because it will be white on white. That's okay. The background circle is not the subject here. So I'm just going to go through and see if there's any unnecessary guidelines that I don't need that I can get rid of before I start doing the ink. But I'm still keeping an eye on my reference picture. Alright, I made his butt bigger, so I have to erase that line there. Totally wreck my light. Okay. So something else I do, especially in instances like this where there's a lot of this like convoluted line work, is I will go in with my pencil and just fill in where the shadows are very lightly, just dark enough so you can see where the shadows are going to be, and then when you go over it with ink, you'll erase those lines and make it all nice and pretty looking. These shadows don't all have hard lines on them though, so you don't want to completely outline them in pen. You just want to outline the sides of them that are hard lines, and then you'll use watercolor paint to fade out the other sides that aren't so hard. Yeah, so you can already start to see where the shadows are if you just start filling it in like that. This is definitely for you, the artist, because it's all going to be erased. It can make your life a lot easier, though. With fabric, don't forget there's always like a million lines. A million little wrinkles. With this specific line, I'm doing a very soft like whisper line because that's going to be a stroke of watercolor paint that kind of forms a line. Thankfully, the paint will also cover up any lines that you miss when you're erasing, for the most part, if they're not too dark. And I believe I've always been able to erase through the watercolor paint if I've had to also, so I'm not sure if that works for every kind of watercolor paint, but I found that watercolor is very forgiving, which is kind of surprising because it's a difficult medium to control. But if you go over a painted spot that's dried with just a wet paintbrush, you can basically just erase whatever marks you've made before. You just keep adding water to that spot and it will lift the paint out of the paper. But I will go over that more once I actually get to that point. Some of these shadows are going to be connected too, so we're not going to, like right here, this line will be gone once I actually fill it in. And this is not even like really shading. This is just like a guide for you. So right here, the shadows, they are connected, but one shadow is going to be harder than the other because it's basically like one part of fabric is folding over the other part. So I am going to leave this line here and maybe darken it a little bit just so I can see it better. So when I go in with pen, this is going to be a hard line, but this is going to be a soft watercolor line. And same with this point. These are both shaded sections, but they are not connected. There's a hard line there. Another thing I'm going to do before I move on to the ink is I'm going to probably do the stripes of his sweater and also the shading, just outline the shading on his sweater so I don't lose it when I erase everything. Sorry if you hear my stomach growling. I'm going to go eat in a few minutes, promise. I think that's a pretty decent outline for the shadows on the legs. Yeah, I really should do a sweater, but as much as I profess that fine details are important, it can be very tedious. Still not happy with the circle. Like when I look at it in person, it looks fine, but this part right here, it just looks weird. Like maybe this needs to go out more. I'm gonna be messing with this until it's done. Ooh, that doesn't look good. Widen this a little bit. I'm starting to see eraser lines on the paper, which is not great if you want the middle to be white, so I probably should just stop messing with this circle. It looks okay. Plus I'm going to be painting watercolor around it, so I can always adjust it then if I need to. Okay, I'm going to fill in this area because this is all just black shadow. But I'm going to leave it light enough that I can see the outline here on the arm. Because that's actually part of the arm that's just dark. But if I blend it together too much, it's going to make it look like his arm is skinnier than it should be. And it's dark over here. These are really just the big pockets of shadows. There are little shadows on his arms and his face, but those are things that I'm going to worry more about when I actually am painting. I know he's wearing an earring too, but I can't see it in this reference picture. It's a little earring with the lion holding the ring in its mouth. Something that I have trouble with a lot is when you're doing like pinstripes like this on a sweater or t-shirt or whatever, keeping them all kind of a uniform width can be very difficult. But that's why I'm here. I'm practicing so I get better. Yeah, like right here you can see the lines are not super uniform. But especially towards the bottom here, it's going to be all completely covered in shadow anyway, so this part right here is more of a guide for me than anything. This whole area is shaded. He's got these like couple hard lines on his chest. This is like a white squiggly highlight here, which means it's probably like some kind of shiny material. Let's just go with leather or polyester. This part is all one shadow, so you're not even going to see that outline there. Okay, he's got stripes over here too, but I think shading this part is going to be the most difficult besides the pants because it's all different like lengths of shiny metal. Shiny metal, even in anime, it's like gets the smooth shading a lot more than the characters do. So I'll probably just outline this part and then do all the shading with the watercolor after that. As for the hair, I usually will wait until the very end to do that. I am doing this in black and white, so his hair will be a little bit easier than trying to do different shades with like ochre. But I am going to have to do some more line work on his hair with pen. Like Vanitas' hair was a little bit easier because his hair is black and you can make it really dark. I actually made it too dark and I had to end up adding a bunch of water to lighten it, but okay, and he actually doesn't have bare fingers, he's wearing gloves. I love shading fingers. It's so easy. Seems like when Final Fantasy VII came out, that like all of the characters were wearing these like heavily striped clothes. It's like when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out and all the characters were wearing like random plaid for no reason. Like this really doesn't seem to fit the aesthetic of the whole Disney thing. So whatever this metal is he's got on his arm, it's pretty shiny. It's like the lines that define his pecs are not even like just lines. They're like super jagged shadows. I'm just gonna put some guidelines in his hairs just so I know where to do some of the shading. I think another thing that is a struggle, that has always been a struggle for me in art, is blonde hair and like white hair. It's easy to draw someone with brown hair comparatively, but you have to be very subtle with the shadows when you're doing blonde and white. Might be why I draw Lana Del Rey so much. Like, her hair is easier to draw than, say, Lady Gaga or Katy Perry's short blonde hair. Okay, I think that's a pretty good place to stop probably for now. I would keep going, but I'm really hungry, so gonna go get some food. But this is pretty much the whole process of doing the outline. So maybe tomorrow, I will go over it with probably like a 3.5mm ink pen. And then we could start on the watercolor after that. Since I'm doing black and white, it will hopefully not take as long to. Well, thank you for watching this test run of doing art on the stream. I will try to do it again tomorrow.